record here. All right, so the name of the game today, first of all, we'll start the first steps of Module 4, Project 4, which is we're going to embark in some Photoshop studies. So we'll start that. That'll take up the first part of the class today, and then the second part of the class today. It looks like a number of you are having some issues or difficulties or have some questions about Project 3. And so we'll be able to do a help session related to those trying to finish up Project 3 before the end of the day. So sound good? But a number of you have already submitted Project 3. It looks really good. So these things are coming along. And a number of you were emailing me or trying to get my attention over the weekend. And so, I'll just say, first of all, thanks for, working so hard. Second, I hope none of you are getting discouraged, even if you feel like you're asking me 6 questions an hour or a day or something. Don't get discouraged. Try your best not to feel discouraged about these things. Technology is sometimes hard, particularly when you're trying out things for the first time and things just don't work the way they did on my system, or you miss one small step, but it turns out to be a consequential one, and then nothing seems to go right. So again, try to keep the positive outlook here on the course content, because you're going through some processes and workflows, then we're really hitting on the ones that you'll repeat over and over and over and over again for the next few years. And so we're just trying to go over and over and over them again, every week in this class to engender good habits and make sure that you know the basic workflows in and out. But that's basically all we can do, is sort of whet your appetite in a crash course like this, and sort of hopefully demystify these programs for you enough that you feel confident in the future to go, as you move forward and sort of learning more about how to do certain things that we didn't cover in this class. We can only cover so much in a short amount of time online over the summer in a shortened semester. And so, really the key thing is to sort of help provide you with some confidence and some literacy. So with these programs, these software packages, so that you can open them up again later and continue to work and develop your skills with them, okay? So I think that's one thing I'd say right off the bat. You're going to fail sometimes in this class. And I don't mean like that in the F grade sense, but in the sense that something's just not working. Or you're going to have to learn something the hard way, right? Like trial and error, or, and honestly, that's an important part of learning, right? We shouldn't feel, I hope that you don't feel the pressure of not failing in this class, right? Because the mantra here isn't, don't ever fail or make mistakes. You're going to have questions, right? You're going to have some troubleshooting that we're going to have to do with you. But the key thing is to fail early, fail often, right? Because you're going to learn that way as well. And we're going to, that's kind of how you have to work when you're dealing with new technology that you're learning on the fly, while you're also trying to accomplish something really important with it, okay? And so, again, just with any sort of design process, fail early, fail often is the mantra here. So don't be afraid of failure, but in fact, embrace it and learn from it as we go. The earlier and the more often you fail, the more questions you're going to have each time we meet in class. And then that makes me earn my keep for that day, actually helping you out when you have very directed, pointed questions that are directed at me to make sure that you're on your way to success, okay? All right, so I didn't know if I've ever given you that speech before, but again, the mantra isn't, don't be afraid to fail, right? But again, failing early, failing often means that you start, Project 4 today, and again tomorrow, and the next day. And so, if you start to run into problems, challenges, and things like that, I have an opportunity to work with you on working past them. Okay. A few of you have gotten really good at that. But anyway, so without any further ado, let's talk about Project 4. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. this is being recorded, so I'm going to do some demonstrations today in Photoshop. I'll post those in the step 1 portion of the module that we go over here in just a sec. Share screen, share my desktop. There we are. Okay, hopefully you guys can see what looks like Chrome and Canvas. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here, but okay, so for project 4, we're going to talk about Photoshop. Haha, surprise. And hopefully this isn't a surprise at all. We will be, let me just bring up the chat box here so I don't miss that. For some reason it disappears when I share my screen. All right, just in case someone's trying to get my attention, I can hopefully see that. You know, hopefully not surprises that we'll be picking up where we left off in project 3. So we'll use our section perspective drawing, and we'll bring it into Photoshop and then build a more of an experiential or atmospheric collage, right? So we'll start to pimp this out in Photoshop. And again, we'll do a simple one. We'll go over the basics. What you'll find is that it's a lot of layering, okay? And then a lot of copying and pasting and things like that, okay? Learning objectives, we'll understand perspective drawings. We'll talk about perspective and perspectival projection. We'll be dealing with layers, adding layers and layers and layers of graphic information to create this collage. We'll use material overlays and textures. So we'll map textures and materials and shaders onto surfaces in Photoshop rather than trying to deal with rendering them out, which is kind of a pain. And then we'll also add entourage. Entourage meaning trees, animals, plants, humans, things that begin to populate the scene to add ambiance, to begin to show scale and to begin to suggest the program, you know, the sort of ideas of how these spaces would actually be used by people, okay? All right. The schedule goes like this. It shouldn't be a surprise. It's kind of similar to what we've been doing before. Today, we'll go over the first part of the assignment for Project 4, and we'll have some time, like I said, after that, then to do any troubleshooting we need to do. If you need help on Project 3, trying to finish that up today or tomorrow. Tomorrow, then we'll go over the second part of Project 4, okay? We'll talk more about what those parts entail down here in the workflow. And then Thursday, we'll go over the third and last part. And each time after the demonstration lecture, we'll have basically in-class work time, troubleshooting, help session, okay, Q&A. The idea, the goal is to have Project 4 due by next Tuesday, the 11th. However, Photoshop can be pretty involved, and there's lots of ins and outs and nuances and lots of little steps and lots of big steps. So if we get to Thursday or we're over the weekend and it really seems like, you know, in order to ensure your confidence in the program as well as, you know, sort of good outputs, if we need to extend that due date, then I'm willing to do it. I just want to sort of play by ear at the moment. So this is one of those times where, remember in the syllabus I said, you know, the calendar is subject to change. It'll only change in your favor if it needs to be. If it needs to be changed. And so in this case, I'm just going to play by ear. I'm going to reserve the right to push back the deadline if I feel like we really need to, okay? You know, and Project 5 is pretty minimal anyway if we get to it, which is just, you know, making a template in InDesign and plugging and chugging all of these outputs that you've created for projects 1, 2, 3, 4 into a portfolio, set of portfolio leaf pages, spreads, whatever. Okay, so more about that as we go, but I just want to point that out. If you're really freaking out, you know, it's Thursday, you've tried this stuff, it's not clicking, you know, just let me know. And again, I'm going to try to take care of this as much as we can in person, not in person, but, you know, in person virtually, I guess we would say, in Zoom between Tuesday and Thursday. And then, you know, we can always play by ear if we need to have 1 or 2 more sessions in Zoom before I make the final result due. Okay, so Project 4 workflow goes something like this. Today we're going to go over some real basics. We're going to start with this output from Illustrator, right? Sort of the base drawing, the section perspective drawing you did for today. We're going to go over how to copy and paste certain layers in. We're going to add a sky. We're going to adjust the saturation and the coloration of it. I've also provided an example sky for you to use if you want. You can always go out and find one yourself, and I'll show you what to look for if you're interested in that. We'll add poche to the section cut, right? So in other words, we'll make sure that we add a fill, a solid fill or hatch to all the places that are being cut. Some cases I think you can actually see inside here. We'll go ahead and do that in Photoshop just to make sure. To do that, we'll go over the polygonal lasso selection tool, which is pretty handy. Then we'll add the first round of entourage. So we'll add some scaled figure silhouettes. We'll get these. I have a pack of them in Illustrator that we'll open up, and then we can copy and paste them into Photoshop in a number of different ways, scale them and position them. Okay, so we'll go from something like this today. Start with something like this and move into something like this. Okay, by the end of the day. I'll record the demo and then I'll post it on YouTube and embed it into the Canvas page if you need it. Okay. Tomorrow, for step 2, we'll talk about textures, maps, and material overlays. Okay. So we'll start to carefully select different portions of these surfaces and begin to map different materials on, like wood, concrete textures, and things like that. We'll add some warm coloration to the ground plane where we have tile. And then really importantly, we'll start to make selection paths. So we'll actually go around and carefully select all of the positive space of our building and unselect all the negative space in windows and the edges of our building. We'll put that on a selection path so we can continue to sort of use that to clip and selectively delete or show different portions of more layers that we put in here. Because on Thursday, then we'll add nuance and atmosphere. So we'll start by fixing the horizon by starting to add vegetation. We'll add entourage, more trees. Okay. We'll try to hide this horizon line so that we don't look like we're on the edge of the world and the sky just sort of, we'd fall off the edge of the table, so to say. We'll try to add, I'm gonna try to find some textures for you guys to use for ground covering. We'll start to add casting shadows for the trees. We can add maybe even some birds and things like that, and then make them look like they're flying through the sky with a little bit of motion blur, etc. Okay, so we'll be going over using some extra types of brushes, cleaning up the bottoms of trees, with a certain type of brush, adding shadows with a brush, either adding color or an overlay layer, or using dodge and burn. And so, again, I just try to be reductive as possible to try to help you out to sort of follow along with the steps. Okay, so that's sort of the timeline of where we go. We go from here to here to here, and then finally to here. Okay, it's a very simple, not photorealistic, but design collage, right? So you can begin to talk about the sort of spatial qualities and programmatic qualities. People having a picnic out here, people standing and talking over here, something happening up here, right? Of the design scheme. Okay, and again, this is meant just to sort of point you to all of these different tools and skills that you're going to use over and over and over and over again, that you can immediately absorb into your studio design work in the fall. Okay. All right. So that's it in a nutshell. There's a rubric here, and then how to submit your project for when it comes time to that, early next week. Let's just open up Photoshop. Sorry, bear with me. My mouse, I lose my cursor from time to time because I'm on 2 different screens. But this mouse and this tabletop don't really agree with each other very, very well. Okay, so you might have thought like, oh, layers, maybe they're just a Rhino thing, or layers, maybe they're just a Rhino and Illustrator thing. No, they're also a Photoshop thing. Photoshop is all about layers, right? In fact, again, if you look at the cursor over here, on the bottom right-hand part of my screen that I'm sharing, you'll see a layers box. You'll see there's a number of different layers here as I go, right? So if I just start to turn things on and off, you can begin to see how I've layered things up as a collage, really quite often as a collage. You can copy and paste things just like a collage. I don't know if you guys have ever made collages before in art class or something like that. But I start with this base drawing. I can add a sky. I'll just build this up as I go. I can, in this case, I'm not going in the order that we're going to actually do these things for various reasons. I drew a lasso around this shape and then added a fill color and then made that an overlay layer. So gave that just a little bit of a warm tone, warm color. When you use an overlay layer, what's nice about it is you can still see the shadows and shading below, right? So all that tone from the rendering, we just added coloration to it. Let's see, go over and make the poche for everything being cut, right? Give it a nice solid color, black mullions, glass, the ground, slabs, walls, okay. Add a concrete texture, so look at this wall, and I'll turn on the texture, right? Just give it a little bit of nuance. Same with this wall, and let's say, let's give it a nice warm sort of wood. Okay, there's that. Let's add some trees in the background that are gonna help hide the horizon. Let's add some trees in the midground that are slightly less transparent, a little darker. Let's add some trees in the foreground that help frame the drawing, that are darkest. Let's add some people. Let's add some birds. Let's maybe draw some shadows on the ground with some brushes. Okay, so that's in a nutshell, right? Now I'm not going to suggest that all of this is easy, particularly if this is the first time ever using Photoshop. So without any further ado, let's just start from scratch. I'll leave this PSD file up. Now, one thing you'll understand, or you'll begin to quickly understand, is that we can bring in PNG files, we can bring in JPEG files, we can bring in TIFF files that we've generated ourselves in Rhino or Revit or Illustrator, or we find on the web. But as we start to layer things together and we save as a PSD file, a Photoshop document, okay? And that way we preserve all these layers so we can go back in and start to edit anytime we want. We can turn layers on and off, we can change the order or top to bottom order of layers. We can go back in and adjust, fine tune, turn down the transparency or opacity, et cetera, et cetera. So the PSD file is the sort of working file that you open up in Illustrator, right? You know, for the end, you'll save as a PDF to submit, but that PSD is something that you want to keep because you can always add it up, open it back up, and then begin to edit and continue to work inside, okay? Without it flattening all of your layers into just one composite drawing. All right, so let's start where we left off, like I promised in project 3. I'm going to open up Illustrator, and I'm going to open up my section perspective drawing, and we're going to export that in a particular way as a PNG file. That way it preserves the transparent background again, so we can add a sky really quickly and easily. So I'm just waiting for Illustrator to open up. I don't know why I didn't have that open before. Sorry about that. Let's just drag this over. As well, later on, we'll be using human silhouette packs and tree silhouette packs. I've already included those as links for you to use if you want in Canvas in the workflow. Let's see here. So section perspective. Looks like this is it. Yeah, there it is. Okay. And so here's my section perspective. I actually, in this one, I just modified the edge of my artboard so that it's shorter and smaller than how far this extended. I didn't necessarily need to see all this empty space over here. Again, you know, when you want to edit your document or your artboard, you just go to Document Setup, Edit Artboards, and you can move those around, resize them how you need to. That shouldn't be anything new, but suffice to say, you know, we have, if I go to my layers here, oh, this is one big layer. Oh, okay, maybe this is just the wrong one. Oh yeah, sorry, this is just a PNG file, sorry. I just opened up the wrong thing. Here we go. The AI, here we go. Here's my Illustrator file. My bad, forget I ever showed that to you. Okay, here's my Illustrator file. Ta-da, right, you all have, or are close to having something like this. I've seen a number of them already. Good job, by the way, for those of us submitted. So this is an Illustrator file. You can see I have an underlay, right? Otherwise, I just have a line drawing. It looks like I'm missing a line there. I'm just gonna maybe, not sure what's going on there. Let's see. Yeah. You know, sometimes that happens, I suppose. You're like all too frequently sometimes, Vermilion. Just move that down. There we go, like that. All right. That'll just bug me all day. Even if this is just a throwaway demo file that I'm making, it'll still bug me because I'm just anal like that. All right, so I have everything that I want to see on. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to File. Let me just make Illustrator a little bigger. It's kind of sometimes confusing if you see Photoshop in the background. What's Illustrator, what's Photoshop? So File, Export, Export As, okay? File pull-down menu, Export, and then Export As. I'm going to export this as a PNG file. So I'm going to make sure that the format is set to PNG. PNG, again, will preserve the transparent background above that horizon. So when we add a sky in, it'll look all right. I'm going to say export. It's going to pop up some settings. I'm going to say resolution high, 300 ppi, pixels per inch. I'm going to make sure it's set to art optimized for lines. So like all this lines, they'll be optimized to sort of, you'll see what that means in a second. Background color transparent. Okay, I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to save a PNG file. Here we go. All right. Exported that out. In Photoshop, I'm just going to open that up, my PNG file that I made, desktop. There it is. Ta-da! All right. Now, a couple of things here, and this is a big difference, I think, between Illustrator and Photoshop, right? So in Illustrator, we've been playing around with line work, and then we bring in an image and put it in the background, right? We can select all of those lines and curves and adjust their line weight and even move them around and stuff. Now what we've done is we've turned all of that stuff into a raster graphic, right? An image, a bitmap. So instead of having actual lines with start points and end points that we can select and move and change their line weight, everything is now set to a grid, and each square inside the grid, each pixel is just assigned a color, right? So a diagonal line is not really a line; it's just a diagonal pattern of black pixels in relationship to the gray and the white pixels around it. Okay. Okay. So Illustrator lets us do the vector graphics. Photoshop lets us do the raster graphics, right? In other words, everything's sort of pixelated. If we zoom in, things will actually get pixelated. In vector graphics, that doesn't happen, right? We can blow up that line, and it's really just remembering the algebraic equation to draw a line, with that slope. And so you don't pixelate things. In Photoshop, it does. Okay. In Photoshop, everything now is a raster graphic. It's just one big grid of multicolored cells. All right. Okay. So here we go. First things first. And I just want to double check here, make sure we're hitting everything in the checklist I made in order. So where did that go? Here we go, Canvas. We just prepared and exported our base drawing as a PNG file. We brought that into Photoshop. Let's go ahead and add a sky. Okay. Again, I've included a link to the sky for you if you want. I'm just going to open it up from my desktop here. Photoshop, open. I can open anything I want in Photoshop, it seems like. Many things as I want at a time. Let's see here. I'm not sure. There we go, blue. There we go. There's a sky, blue sky. Okay, so there's that blue sky JPEG opened in Photoshop. You see these tabs up here. I have my original demo drawing that I used. I was just playing around with it this morning to put together for you guys. Here's my here's the base drawing that I'm going to use. Okay, and here's a sky file I'm going to use, right? Image of a sky. I am just going to copy and paste this, literally just copy and paste this from here into here. Okay, so one of the things I need to do is select the entire area. Okay, with Photoshop, it's similar to Illustrator in that I have a set of tools along the left-hand side. I have some settings along the top, and then I have a series of boxes, including my layers box on the right-hand side. Okay, so the interfaces are similar enough to get by when you're starting out. I have a sort of a cursor, right? And then I have a set of selection tools here. So I'm going to open up the rectangular selection tool, and I'm just going to click and drag from one corner, top left corner to the bottom right corner, and draw a selection box. I've selected the entire image, and now I can quite literally hit Control C to copy, and go to my other image and hit Control V to paste. Okay. There's my selection tool again. I can just click and drag, let off my click now, my mouse button. I can select any portion of this. I want to select the whole thing, so I go from top left to bottom right, and then Control C to copy, and then Control V to paste. Copy and paste. This guy is a different resolution and different size than the base drawing. Resolution-wise and size-wise, it's fine. This was a 300 DPI drawing, so I can actually size this up. I'm just going to make sure I have the cursor button selected. I can then click and drag this layer around where I want it. Okay. When you see when I pasted it in, it put it on its own layer, new layer. So I'm going to double click on these layers. This first one, layer 1, I'm just going to rename it. Double click on the label, and you can then type in a new label for it. I'll call this base drawing, because that's what it is. And then this layer 2, where it made for my sky, I'm just going to type in sky. Now, another thing I can do is I can click and drag that sky layer down in the sort of hierarchy here of the list of layers, so that the sky is actually underneath the base drawing. And see what happens now. The sky is underneath the base drawing in my scene, which is handy. Okay, I need to resize this sky. So we're going to do a basic transform on the layer. There's a shortcut for this called where you can use Control T or Command T, which toggles on the transform tools. But I'm just going to show you where this is in the pull down menus, because you'll see that there are more options, and we'll use some of these options later on in the future. So if we go to Edit Pull Down, and you go to Transform, right? You can scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective, warp, rotate, flip, and etc. Okay. What you want to do is you want to make sure that whatever you want to transform, whichever layer you want to transform, you have it selected over here in the layers box before you actually select this. I'm just going to say transform and scale. You can see the layer that I have selected now has a sort of outline around it with these handles that I can click and drag in order to resize. I'm just going to resize it like this. I can hit enter, and I'm done transforming. I can again make sure that my cursor over here, my move cursor is selected, and I can position this up and down or move it around. Just trying to get the right position here, my sky. So let's see. There we go. I'll just put it somewhere over here. Okay. All right. So we just copied and pasted a layer in. One of the things I wanted to talk about with the sky is I wanted to adjust the coloration here. To me, sometimes you want a really bright, vibrant color. Other times, like with the sky or something like that, you don't want to draw everybody's attention to your sky first and foremost. And so while I like the blue, I don't necessarily want it to be this vibrant. Okay, so I can change some of those color settings by going to Image Pull Down. Sorry, let me make sure I have the layer selected. Sky layer selected, Image Pull Down, and Adjustments. Okay, this brings a whole nother list of really handy tools that we're going to use over and over and over again: brightness and contrast, levels, curves, exposure, vibrance, hue and saturation, which is what we're going to go to next, color balance. We can adjust shadows and highlights, all sorts of things here. All right, I'm going to go to hue, saturation, and it's going to bring up a box. I just have to drag it in from my other screen here. Okay. So first of all, saturation is how much color you have. So I have my sky selected. I can crank up the coloration and really make that a like vibrant blue, like so colorful it makes your teeth hurt sort of thing. Or I can turn down the saturation. And what it begins to do is it starts to gray it out until it becomes black and white or grayscale. Okay. And so I can always tone this down and make it more of a blue-gray. I can also recolorize it and turn it like warmer, like add some violet to it, or cooler and add some green and/or some gold to it. So I can begin to adjust things here to sort of warm things or cool things off. just gonna maybe make it a little more aqua. There we go, and hit OK. All right, so I adjusted the coloration. Let's see here. Copy and pasting layers. We talked about the sky, and we adjusted saturation. Saturation is how much color. Hue, I don't know if you guys ever studied this in art class. Hue is literally just another name for color. So you could say that hue is violet or that hue is blue, right? That's just referring to a color value. Okay. Now next we're going to do is we're going to go around and we're going to start selecting the portions of the image that's showing, let's say, walls, floors, ground, other materials that are being cut through in our section plane. We're going to go ahead and select those and draw shapes around them. And then we're going to fill in those shapes with poche or fill. Okay. We'll use the polygonal lasso tool for that. So that's next. Let's do that right now. Okay. Just like I could draw a rectangular selection, right? If I click and hold, I can draw any number of shapes, ellipses and circles, or I can start to do really long, short rows, really long, narrow rows, or tall, narrow columns. You know, so I can select just generic shapes, right? But if I go down here, I can also use the polygonal lasso tool. And there's a couple of tools you see are under this, on the second tool on the left-hand side of the toolbar. If you click and hold, polygonal lasso tool is a really handy one. What that lets you do, and I'm just going to zoom in by hitting Control+, just like we did in Illustrator. I'm going to zoom in. What you can see now is that in this rendering, I can actually see inside of this, this wall, right? It's like it's hollow inside. And so what I want to do is I want to carefully go around and draw a shape, this sort of moving around, and click that vertex, click that vertex, click at that vertex, click at that vertex. I'm just going to select that shape. I'm going to make sure I have the right layer on, base drawing. I'm going to actually create a new layer, okay? Down at the bottom, just like with Illustrator, I can create a new layer with the Create a New Layer button. And this new layer, I'm going to say, call it poche, right? It's a French word for fill, poche. All right. So I've selected just this area of the image, which means that I can do anything inside of the selection, which is kind of handy. All right. I'm going to go down to the paintbrush tool. This is a brush. And I'm going to select, go to the properties, the parameters for the brush. I'm going to up the size a bit. Yeah, so you can see the size, it's a circle. And the type, I'm just going to make it a nice solid circle. And then over here with my color palette, right? Again, I have two different colors I can use. I just use the foreground color here. I'm going to set this to black. I can always set this to just the default black and white by clicking there. So I'm gonna make sure that black is selected. If I wanted white, I could always switch them, okay? But now that I have this as black, I can start to draw or paint in black inside the selection box that I made with my polygonal lasso tool. Okay, so I filled that in with black. It's really subtle because it was pretty dark to begin with. I'll just change the color really quickly just to prove, right? Okay, that's what I'm doing, except with black. Okay, so let's go back to black. There we are. All right. And so I'm going to go ahead and unselect that. I'm going to get my polygonal lasso tool. I'm just going to move over and do the same thing with this shape. Just select around the edges here. I just want to really be careful about defining an area that I can just really quickly fill in with my paintbrush, right? Go back to my paintbrush, click, and just sort of paint it in if I need to. I'll zoom out a bit, see what else I have. Oh, okay, so I need to do this. And I also need to look at these mullions and glass panes here. And then I also need to look at the ground down at the bottom. So here, let's just move into position here. The more I zoom in, the more I see, I actually need to fill this in to be a true section here, where you sort of fill in, put a poche or a crosshatch or a fill, in this case just a fill color, of everything that's being cut and with the section plane. So here, again, the paintbrush, I'm just going to fill that in with some black paint, some black ink. I'll zoom out enough so I can go around the edge here. It looks like I have a few pixels showing, so later on I can recrop the image to hear that. I'm just going to click. I can even go outside of the area here and just click around. Then close that shape. And when I get close to the starting point, you'll see that circle with the cursor kicks in. I know now that it's a closed shape. Go ahead and get that brush and I'll just fill this in. Looks like it was a difference between a CMYK color and a RGB color or something, between what was true black or versus black. I'll need a bigger paintbrush for this just to do this really quickly. So I'm just gonna go up here again. I have the paintbrush selected. I'm just gonna up the size so I can do this quicker. There we go. All right. Now let's look at this curtain wall. Even little components are being cut through in section, right? Yeah, there we go. All right, so glass, even glass has a little bit of thickness to it. Let me get my Ligno lasso tool here. There we go. I'm just gonna start to go through mullions. Let me go to this top left corner. I'm gonna select around the shape of the mullions. And I'm just gonna go around and again, draw the shape of the stuff that's being cut here. I'll just end it here for the time being. This is a pane of glass, obviously, sandwiched between two mullions cut in section, another pane of glass. All right. And again, inside of that, I can fill that in with black fill. So I can just carefully go through, zooming in and out as I need to in order to get detail and see better. Sorry, I'm trying to get my cursor. Where'd it go? There it is. Disappeared on me there. Oh, this mouse is pathetic. Here, let me just try to use my touchpad. It'll be easier. Hold down the key, the space key on the keyboard, and then I can pan. So I can slide this down. Okay, let's see. I'll just get the rest of this really quickly. I'll start down here. I'll start at this corner. Looks like I didn't even have a proper edge for this mullion. I'll just draw it in so it can be paintbrushed. And just go along the edges. Again, just making sure that everything that's being cut is filled in black. You know, it might be overkill based off of the line weight that we had and how thin these glass panes were to actually go through the glass panes, but I'll do it anyway. Just a good habit. Always shoot for perfection. So then when you fall short, you still have something good, right? You shoot for mediocrity and fall short, then ugh, you're going to end up with garbage. Garbage in, garbage out. Okay. Selected that. I'm just going to fill that in. You can see my paintbrush is really large. Again, I can go to these parameters and change. Oops. Scratch discs are full. I don't know what that means. Okay. Anyway, now I've got everything here. Let's see. What else? Poche. Oh yeah, scaled figures. Perfect. All right. Again, if I just go to the rectangular selection tool and just click somewhere, I can just sort of unselect everything. Okay, and just zooming out and go back to getting my move cursor tool here. Okay. All right, so I put this guy in, we've copied and pasted some layers, we've moved some things around, we created a new layer, we started selecting things, and then using the paintbrush tool for some basic, just solid color fills, right? In this case, black. Oh, I need to do this top part as well, don't I? Look at that, I almost missed that. Can I use because no layers are selected? Oh yeah, poche layer needs to be selected. That would help. Just fill this in. Right, I can only, the paintbrush, the reason I draw that outline is because the paintbrush is round and I can just sort of move it around. It's really hard to draw things straight. So if I click around and make a nice selection box, then I can just sort of, you know, really sloppily use my paintbrush and it's going to keep everything in between a line, so to say, like when you used to color with a coloring book a million years ago when you were a kid like I was. All right, so There we are. At this point, I'm just going to save. I'm going to save this as a PSD file. So by default, it's going to see all these layers over here and save it as a format, Photoshop format. I'm just going to say section perspective. And I'll call this 267 demonstration. Yeah. All right. There it is. Now, the last step that we're going to cover this morning. Sorry, this thing is, there we go. Okay, I'll just hit OK. Could not save because the scratch disks are full. Why is it saying scratch disks are full? Well, that's weird. I don't have time to worry about that right now. But one last thing that we're going to do is we're going to add entourage. So we're going to add some scaled figures. Okay. Again, the Illustrator file that I'm using, you can download it from my Google Drive through this link. Okay, I recommend you do that. Let's see here. Where is Illustrator? Here it is, actually. Groups of people converted. All right. And so what I've done is I've already taken most of these anyway. A set of vector silhouettes, right? So I can select them and I can change their fill and their stroke color. I've changed their stroke weight. I've made them have a white background with a black outline, okay? And so what I can do is I can begin to take one of these and I can copy. Again, Control or Command C, depending on if you're using Windows or Mac OS. And go into Photoshop and I can paste, Control V or Command V. And when I do that, it gives me this paste box and it says, okay, paste as a smart object or paste as pixels or a path or shape layer. I'm just going to say pixels and I'm going to hit OK. And it inserts them in. Let's just take a look at what those look like. They're pixelated now, they're not vectors. Okay, and so let's just place them on the ground plane. Now, first and foremost, we need to understand what the scale of this drawing is, right? And so if you'll remember, each of these panels were 4 by 4 because this is a curtain wall. And so if we place, let's say, our humans close by, okay, and then we adjust them upwards. Let's say these folks are like, let's say 4 feet, 5, somewhere between 5 and 6 feet. That's a good size. Yeah, so those folks are sized correctly. Okay. And I can place them in here. Okay. I'm going to go back to Photoshop, or sorry, we'll go back to Illustrator, I should say. Let's pick another set. Copy. Okay, and then I'm using my keyboard commands for copy and paste. Paste it in as pixels. Sure. There we are. These folks, let's make them just a little smaller than that. Maybe they're 5'4". Let's say this adult with then some children or something. Okay. We'll make sure that the right scale, and then we'll place them in. Scale is one issue you're always going to have to confront. And that's why you even put, that's oftentimes why you put scale figures in here, so people can actually see the size of this, let's say, architectural proposition that you've done, right? So the outdoor spaces, the scale of the indoor spaces, the scale of walls and floors, ceilings, windows, all of that stuff, right? Trees. Let's see. Let's have these for some shorter folks here. Paste them in. Okay. I think they're a little too large. I'm going to scale them down to the right size. I'll have them playing out here. Now, another thing to remember when it comes to these section perspectives, right, is I have mostly a 1-point perspective. There's a slight 2-point perspective. So there is a vanishing point way off in the distance off to the left of my screen, or let's say this edge and this edge and this edge and this edge. But for the most part, we're seeing a vanishing point right out to, let's see if this and this converge, it'd be right around here. Okay. I'd also follow this, yeah, and this. Okay. And so one thing to keep in mind is that as we get closer to this horizon line, right, all the folks, no matter how close or far away from us, they're going to be the same, they're going to have the same eye level, okay? Down below, it's going to be slightly different. So I'm just doing this for the sake of showing you. You don't have to do this at home, but I'm just going to make a new layer. I'm going to draw a line. Hopefully I can draw a line. Let's see. Yeah. And let's say I find my, my vanishing point right here. I'm just going to draw a vanishing point to that person's eye. And I'll draw another one from that vanishing point to that person's eye. Okay. So one of the key things with this is beginning to understand the size of people. And typically what you do is you want to keep eyes lined up, and then you can begin to scale up or down depending on how close they are, you know, from moving things to the bottom. So we're moving, I guess, moving where their feet are in relationship to their eyes. So let me, just as an explanation of that, let me just put a few more folks in here. Copy and paste. All right. I'm going to put these folks in. I'm going to keep them at eye level. And if I scale them, I'm going to scale them upwards so that they're further back. And again, make sure that they're aligned with the eye level. I don't necessarily need these lines anymore, right? Okay. So let's just keep adding folks in. Oh, wrong one. There we are. There, we'll add a group here. Why not? So again, making sure that we start with the same sort of scale. Okay, I'll place these folks over here. Then because they're a little closer, I'm just going to make them a little bigger, but I'm gonna, again, keep them there. Okay, and so I can keep going and going and going, right? Let me add somebody up here or up here, right? The reason I wanna do that, you'll see in a second, is because we're gonna have to do some selective trimming here. Let's add, these people are showing, you know, a little public display of affection, I guess. All right. So first and foremost, we need to make sure that they're the right scale. So I'll use them, I'll put them with the datum that we've been using the whole time here, and I'll adjust them accordingly. Okay. And I'm just going to place them, let's say they're standing up here. Okay. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to see their feet because they're behind this edge, right? They're so high, right? And so what we can do is once we've put that layer, once we put them in, we can go through with our polygonal lasso tool and just select a portion of that layer. We just close this here that we want to delete, and then we just hit the delete or backspace key. Okay. All right. And now suddenly they look like they're up there. Okay. We just can't see their shoes, right? A few more things, right? As I started to copy and paste layers in, I started to get sloppy and not label them. In this case, these are all people, I think. Yeah, this one is, right? Yeah, these are all humans. Once I make sure everything's good, I'm just going to select all these layers at once. I'm going to select the first layer, and I'll hold down the shift key and select the layer up to the top. I'll select all the layers in between. I've just selected multiple layers. I'm just going to right click, and I'm just going to say merge layers. I'm just going to merge all of those layers into one, all the people. And then I can just double click and I can say people or humans or scale figures or whatever you want to call them. Okay. Again, I'm going to save early, save often. That's the other mantra here for the class. Always save a backup, always back up. See if it's going to tell me I'm out of scratch disk room for some silly reason. Okay, and it doesn't. I don't know what that was all about, but anyway. Okay, so all right. So those are the first steps, right? What we did is we started to play around with the layers. We started copying and pasting some things in. We used the sky. We started to adjust some color values. We made some scaled figures. And we used the paintbrush tool for one of the most basic things you can use the paintbrush tool for, just painting something with a solid color. Okay, well, we use the paintbrush tool for a lot of different things. From darkening and lightening things to painting shadows on to we'll even change the the paintbrush head for the eraser tool and selectively delete things in different shapes. So, but keep in mind, this is just, you got to learn to crawl before you walk, before you start to, run full sprint. So that's what I wanted to demonstrate today, right? Those basic tools: moving, copying and pasting, layer management, and then some of these selection tools, the rectangular selection tools, but also the polygonal lasso tool. That's a really important one. And then a few things you can start to do with the brush tool. Okay. So there's a lot of copy and pasting. We're already up to 4 or 5 layers if you're following along. Okay, but you will later on to this video. Okay. All right, so with that, I'm going to end the demonstration for today. And I'm going to do several things. One, I think it's a good time to take a 10-minute break. It's 11:55. So we'll meet back up at 12:05. I'm going to actually leave the meeting and come right back and then get a glass of water because I'm thirsty. But when that happens, I'll start to transcode the video I just took, the demonstration. So that way, while we're doing the rest of the class, it'll start to prepare the video file so I can upload it to YouTube after class. I'm just trying to speed things up. When we come back from break, it'll be a good work session time. In particular, I want to prioritize those who are trying to finish up project 3 and have some issues or problems, okay? So we'll see you guys in about 10 minutes, 9.5 minutes now, okay? Alrighty, and I'll be right back. I'm just going to leave the Zoom meeting and then come right back.